Bhagavad Gita is, of all of the spiritual texts, it's the number one read and number one commented upon. Part of that is because it's the primary, I shouldn't say that, it's the most commonly utilized spiritual text in India. And there are a lot of people in India, so that's part of the reason. But Westerners have been quite tantalized by the Bhagavad Gita, starting with when the Europeans started to come to India. And so it's been translated into English and other languages so many times, and commented upon by Westerners, Easterners. So we start with chanting the Gita Dhyanam. If we were in India, we would chant in Sanskrit, but we're here, so we'll repeat it in English. In that kirtan book is a loose sheet, and you can read and follow along. It's an invocation that we begin with. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers, and the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent, and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so we've just moved into chapter 12, the Yoga of Devotion. We remember where we ended yesterday, the cosmic vision. We ended yesterday with the devotion, yes, movement into devotion. So we pick up from there. It's not a standalone. And really for all of us, just from a very practical sense as we step into this. We were talking a little bit yesterday about devotion. And from one perspective, devotion is very hard because to switch our devotion to something universal, that we don't fully understand, very difficult, very hard. Devotion itself comes naturally in a way, because we're all devoted to something. Even if it's just an idea, we find ourselves devoted to it. We come to chapter 17 here in a while, which is the yoga of the threefold faith. We all have faith in something. We may not have faith in the same thing that our neighbor has faith in, but we all have faith in something. And so too, we're all devoted to something. As we really study this life, yoga is not about blind faith. It's not about believing in something. It's about really a scientific approach to learning what is this life and who am I and how to be happy, how to live a successful life, how to actually achieve the goal that I've set. And the goal wasn't to have money. That was an interim goal. It wasn't for everybody to leave me alone. It wasn't to be famous. It wasn't to run away. Those were things that we thought were the goal. The common goal that everyone has is simply to be happy. And we don't want to be happy just a little bit. We want to be happy all of the time. And we find ourselves in a situation where life is very unsatisfactory because we don't have what we really want. So we can try to get something, we can be successful at getting that and find, but I didn't get what I really wanted, so I want more. You know, the one who pursues money gets some money, but always it's never enough. The one who pursues relationships of a certain type can be successful in them, but it won't satisfy. immediately come to mind people who've been married 6, 7, 8 times. And, and there's always, even in a relationship, there's always this jarring note, which is, this isn't really completely satisfying. They just said this. And so I might have to move on. And so we find our situation unsatisfactory. And we're not trying to make people be dissatisfied, by the way, when we say this. We're just acknowledging the situation that we're in, which is why we seek. Yoga really, ultimately, Yoga Vedanta is about finding it, but we have to find it within, not without. And within is a great journey. And we find more of the mystery of life coming within. And so, God, the word God, it's the most symbolic word that we use. In other words, everybody will have an idea of what it means. But here, when we study this, we're not relating to an idea of what it means. We're trying to get at the truth of this situation. Who am I? What is this highest? What is it? Even the scientists are trying to break their head to find out what is the highest truth. What is that truth from which all of this comes? What is this life itself? Where did it come from? Who's breathing here? That's an interesting question. Everybody's breathing. Who's breathing? And so study of Bhagavad Gita is an approach to dealing with these questions. And the answer that comes really is an answer that comes from within. There's something posited. Here in Bhagavad Gita, we get this personage called Lord Krishna speaking, but we find it's not actually a person. It's something deeper that's working to speak to us. And so we just came out of this chapter on universe and what is this universe. And the Lord, the Absolute, puts forward that all of this is divine. Not that there's nothing that's not divine. There's nothing that isn't made of the single universal truth, which is played out through this entire universe, throughout all of these universes. And so we pick up here where Arjuna is asking this question now about how to relate to you the truth, speaking to the truth, having seen that all of this is of this one truth manifested or appearing. And so the answer that comes is devotion. And devote yourself to me. And who is that speaking? That's the universal speaking. It's not a person. That's what ego does, is ego lords around and says, devote yourself to me, because I'm the one that has the power. And the languaging here is similar, but it's actually that happiness itself, which is inside of us, speaking to us, saying, devote yourself to me. It's a hard concept to get at, but it's really like this. Devote yourself to me. Not devote yourself to pursuits of being happiness, but devote yourself to me, your own highest self, which is inside of you. Like this. The name of it is not actually Krishna, but the names are many. Actually, when we get to that place, there's no name there. Its name is silence. Its real name is silence. Not the word silence. That. So Arjuna asked this question then about devotion, and we begin to explore that here. And he sees and he's aware that there are different schools of thought on how to relate to the highest. So he asks this question. He says, those devotees who, ever steadfast, thus worship you, and also those who worship the imperishable, the unmanifest, which of them are better versed in yoga? So again, the physicists have come to the understanding that this manifest world somehow, they call it singularity, somehow comes from what is unmanifest. And so there is some understanding of a relationship that the manifest, the harmonium, for example, actually is made of, science would say, strings, energy, as opposed to matter, and even higher than that. So there are schools of thought, and we'll pick it up here from Swami Chinmayananda. He says because Arjuna is asked the question, which is better, in form or is the formless? To relate to you, the highest, which is better? And we pick it up here. The philosophical discourses contained in the divine song, though written in a controversial style or conversational style, never overlook the systematic development of its thoughts, not only within the chapter, but also from chapter to chapter. The last chapter ended with an assurance from the Lord that any seeker can realize the glory of the cosmic form if only he can attain an unwavering devotion. As a prince of royal blood, Arjuna must have felt tickled by this great challenge thrown at him. As a practical man of the world, he inquires here as to the form on which he should meditate. And so there are 9 shlokas here that we'll cover over the next couple of days or next few days that are very, very interesting. They're interesting even from a scientific perspective, but they're very interesting in terms of this question of if I have come to see that there's a higher truth, and if I wish to devote myself to it, what is the best way to do it? This is an interesting question as well. So these shlokas are dealing with it. He says, the question is very intelligently put. It's quite well known that in the world there are 2 types of seekers seeking one and the same goal. Some meditate upon the manifested form of the infinite, and others contemplate upon the unmanifested supreme. What might be an obvious example of that is in 2 of the primary religions in the world, Christianity and Islam. They're both Abrahamic traditions. They both rely upon the same basic teachings. They both talk about Adam and Eve. Of course, they war with each other in all of this, but the religions themselves don't. The followers do out of ignorance, not knowing that they're both pointing to the same truth. Not wanting to accept it, not wanting to allow for it either. But they have 2 different approaches. Do you know the difference? Where's the cross in Islam? Where's the symbol that's worshipped? No? No symbol is worshipped in Islam. Worship of a symbol in Islam is seen as sin. When they go on pilgrimage and there's this pyramid shape in the center, do they worship the pyramid? No. They better not. They better be careful. They might get their head cut off. I mean, it's crazy how that's dealt with, but still, from the principle, who's Allah? What does Allah mean? Allah means exactly the same thing as Brahman, which is that unmanifest absolute, which has faces everywhere, but is not the face. Sounds familiar. Yeah. So the principle in Islam is to worship the unmanifest. And if you go to a mosque, has anybody been to a mosque? Well, I was walking till, you should go. You should go. You should just go. You should experiment with life. Really, really, really. Don't hold on to your own preset notions and ideas. It's a boring life when we do. Be open. Allow yourself to experience. Especially hang out with crazy people. It's the best. The ones the world calls crazy, it's the best. Really, it is. So in a mosque, if you go into a mosque, of course, many would rail about how they've separated, the men go on one end and the women come in another. Setting that aside for a moment, because that's a long discussion, or very short discussion, we could just say it's terrible and dismiss it. But once you're in the mosque, what do you see? Mosque is very stark, and there's really no symbol in the mosque. So you might see the crescent moon somewhere, but it won't be on an altar. There won't be an altar. There will be an imam, a priest, who oversees the service, but then everyone, there is a lot of prostration in the service itself, and there's a talk, there's discussion. In some traditions there will be some chanting. Certainly there is prayer, group prayer, and there is prostration. And who are they prostrating to? Are they prostrating to a person? Yeah. Are we prostrating to a person? Yeah. No, neither are they. And then you go to the Christian church, and you see that the cross is there, or some symbol of Jesus, who's seen as one with the Godhead. Still, even though many people forget it, Jesus himself said, don't worship me as a person, worship the Father, right? Worship that unmanifest, he says. But you can follow me, pick up your cross and follow me, and I'll show you the way. But he never says, worship me as a person. Interesting. But I'll show you. In any event, we see the symbolism and worship of the symbol. And both sincere devotees in both traditions will reach the goal. In other words, they're saints in both of the traditions. And so this question, and what's being shared here is this question or this argument about what's the proper approach. Is it to approach the Godhead or the highest or the absolute in form, through a form, or as the formless absolute? That's the question Arjuna is asking here. So Swamiji continues talking about it a little bit. He says, in philosophy, the unmanifest is that which is not directly perceptible to the sense organs. So you can't feel it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it. And actually, if we study it, we see the sense organs came from it. I mean, this entire world came from nothing. And so too, then, these sense organs had to have come from the same nothing, right? No thing. Something that you can't see, you can't taste, you can't touch, you can't smell. The objects that can be brought within the perceptible powers of our sense organs are called the manifested. So unmanifested is what you can't see, taste, touch, etc. But it can be learned to be real, not in the way that you would see it or taste it or touch it, but you can learn that it's real if you inquire what is the underlying reality and follow the thread. Now, scientists today are working with, again, the question, what was before the Big Bang? And there continues to be speculation. It's officially called singularity, meaning we don't know. But unmanifest. And manifest is from the Big Bang forward. everything that you can sense. And so these two approaches are being discussed here to relate to the highest truth. So Arjuna was taught in his early studies of the Vedas that the Supreme was unmanifest and all-pervading. But he had, in the previous chapter, personal experience of the divine cosmic form. Naturally, the determined prince, seeking to understand the right path of spiritual evolution, Arjuna is lit. We say lit. Arjuna is on fire because he's come to realize this highest truth, and now he's about to start in battle, and he doesn't want to forget. So he's lit. He's going to follow this, and he's going to ask every question until he's absolutely certain. And he knows who he's with right now. He knows that he's asking questions, and the Supreme Authority is answering them. So he's lit. He's lit. He's really on fire. Yeah, I mean, if you were standing close to Arjuna right now, you would feel the vibration. So, and so intently so. So as he's asking these questions, these are burning questions for him. The question expresses the great controversy that exists even today in the world we talked about. Can the Lord highest be meditated upon and realized ultimately through idol worship, a person or form? Can any symbol represent it, or him, or her? Yeah, interestingly, we could say any symbol can, depending upon how you relate with it. But okay, so here we go. The answer starts to come. We understand the question? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the answer comes. First, those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. So you see, first, he doesn't completely answer. Some interpretation, some translations will have him saying in form here in this first one, but so commentary. In this very opening stanza, Krishna points out three conditions that are absolutely necessary in order that devotion unto the Lord may yield its promised dividends. So he doesn't say form or formless. He says, here's what's necessary first. And then he'll answer the question. But first, fix your mind on me. And this is not form speaking. I mean, this is the craziest thing. If you take a little while and you ask the question, when you open your mouth, who's speaking? It's a very interesting question. Something will say, I am, but then if you follow it, did I create this voice? You have one too. Did I do both of them? Or just one? Do I know how this works? Did I invent it? Or am I using it? And is what I'm using personal or is it universal? So you see, when you really ask questions, it starts to work at our ideas and notions and starts to rip them apart in a way. So Arjuna realizes who he's talking to. And this that's talking, and we'll just say, not a question of blind faith, not a question of believing blindly, but we posit, we put forward, it's actually the absolute underlying that has taken voice, as it were, and speaks here and says, regardless, those who fixing their mind on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these, in my opinion, are the best in yoga. Meaning they're the most successful at finding the happiness. The most successful at achieving the goal of satisfaction, the goal of satisfaction. We can say moksha or freedom like this. So we'll read the commentary. In this opening stanza, Krishna points out 3 conditions that are absolutely necessary in order that devotion unto the Lord may yield its promised dividend, satisfaction, happiness. Generally, there is a feeling that the path of devotion is very easy. It's equally true to say that no chosen path is difficult for the seeker who's chosen it. Paths are different only because the vehicles employed. In a boat, we can never travel through the Grand Trunk Road, nor can we sail over the waves in a plane, nor on a cycle dash at 60 miles an hour. There are limitations to each vehicle, but progress is assured to the intelligent and the careful, even with any such vehicle. Similarly, for self-development, each type of seeker, according to the vehicle available, chooses either the path of devotion or the path of action or the path of knowledge. These are the different paths of yoga. To each one of them, the path is easiest, which would be why different people will advocate one or the other. Fixing their thought on me. Thought is the content of our subtle body. Both the mind and intellect are nothing but thoughts. It is not sufficient if they leisurely wander around the concept of the Lord, but they have to actually penetrate, delve into, merge, and ultimately dissolve themselves to become the very ideal perfection which the Lord represents. The word that is being used here in the stanza, avesya, indicates not merely a thought contact, but an actual thought penetration. In fact, human thought takes the form of, gathers the fragrance of, and even puts on the glow of the qualities of the objects of its contemplation. So our thoughts take on the qualities of whatever it is that we contemplate. I met people that meditate with trees and no laughter. But what does that mean to meditate with trees? They bring their thoughts to the tree and somehow experience unity with the tree. I've known people who meditate on money. I was in the club. And their thoughts take on the nature of the money. In other words, the thoughts become all about. Yes. And so whatever it is that we're meditating upon, there's a nature to the thoughts and a power in the thoughts. And by the way, not just the thoughts that do, but then one's entire life becomes of the nature of it. So you might even say that person's a walking dollar bill. In other words, they're all about money, right? Or they're all about sex, or they're all about whatever it is. And don't judge anyone here. It'll work the same with each of us. The one that we say is a saint is simply all about the divine. Yogananda, you see his thoughts, if you get a view of his thoughts, especially you're reading Autobiography of a Yogi now, not the first time, right? Or is it?
I'm not reading it, but...
Okay, but you had it in hand. You had it in hand a couple of days ago. But you get a flavor for his thoughts. What does he think about? Right? Yes. You see. So, and then his devotees would say, but to me, he is God. Right? And so, and that wouldn't be wrong because his thoughts were in complete union. All he thought about was the divine, was the absolute. So that's the number one. And then to the second point. Ever self-controlled, worship me. The second condition necessary for a devotee to accomplish his evolution through the path of devotion is that he must have sufficient balance in himself to exercise regular self-control while worshiping the Lord. The mind, by its very nature, will always try to run wild from its objects of contemplation, and the art of keeping the thought balanced at its point of concentration is called self-control. So whatever it is that we're contemplating, even if it's an apple, the tendency of the mind will be to run on from that somewhere else.
Oh, yes.
And that tendency is born of the feeling of being incomplete, we call it ego, and needing something in order to complete us, which is why some will say this will complete me and some will say that will complete me, but nobody actually finds the completion through an object, through an other. Only way to find it is finally inside oneself. But the mind is trained in this way because it will contemplate one object and it will hope that satisfaction will be there, but very quickly it will find a defect and it will move on. And it's not even something that seems to be a conscious thought process, but if you look, you see that there's a boredom that comes very quickly, and then it moves on, and it moves to something else. And the challenge, of course, is that while it's doing this, we are experiencing a constant disturbance because it can't stay put. It can't stay in one place. And each time it grasps an object of contemplation, it's like it pulls us there. It's a magnetic force. And it pulls us into some sort of union with it. And so we walk through a supermarket, for goodness sakes, and we might have one or two items on our list, but we walk through the aisles and the senses go to this and that, and the mind starts, and then it moves on, and then it moves on, and then it moves on. And we get out of the supermarket and we're exhausted. And this is not actually the eternal nature of mind, but it is what it's come to in this worldly life, trying to find the thing that will do it. It keeps going from one to one to one, and it's draining the prana. It's draining the life force, and we say, no, I want you to stay. And it's possible to do, but it's an inner battle to do it, right? And what we practice, we said this morning, abhyasa yoga, which is constant practice. In meditation practice, for example, we just bring an object of meditation. We'll use a mantra because it's a sacred symbol and the vibration is a very high vibration. So we'll repeat the mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. But then after a little while, the mind will wander. And now it'll be in that person that yelled at me yesterday. And then, and somehow we see it and we say, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. We keep pulling it back. The awareness drifts because it's accustomed to drifting. Because of course I'm separate. Of course I'm alone. Of course I'm dissatisfied. This is a state that we've come into. It's not the natural state. And so continue to wander. So if you find something that you want the mind to stay on, and here we're dealing with that which is eternal, that which is underlying, that which is always here, although the senses don't know about it. When you find peace within, everybody's had a moment of finding peace within, what can the senses tell you about it?
Nothing.
Right. To the senses, it was empty. But you know that it exists because you found it. You have the experience of it. Yeah? So now you want to bring the mind to that peace, into that state which to the senses is empty. This is the question that Arjuna is asking. So what's the best way to do this? What's the best way to do it? And so here the second quality is self-control, which is just, it's not something that happens by accident. It's something that you do only because it's important. Only because you'll say to yourself, no, I'm not going there. And don't get angry because you get angry and that makes it worse. So don't be angry with yourself. Just be persistent. No, I'm going to do this. And then the mind wanders off. Okay, we're going to do this. And the mind goes somewhere. Oh, we're going to sit down. We're going to meditate. And what happens after some time is you develop self-control a little bit. And then a little bit more. And then a little bit more. And then as fruit comes, fruit like peace, you have an experience of peace, and you see more peace, then that helps you with the self-control, right? That helps you with the resolve. So we're talking now about the process. Here the Lord is saying, to know me and to stay with me, the highest, then this self-control is required. Right? Oh, okay, so we'll come back tomorrow morning. Questions or comments? Oh, okay. Final prayer in Arati, page 174. We have time for the full prayers this morning. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamam Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makarshi Dukhabhav Bhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Mahamritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And then the next page is universal prayer. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Namah Sadguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki. And for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions. Okay, let's stand for Arati, and Arati starts on page 210.